A comprehensive review of all the available footage and reporting on the matter led us to a final conclusion that as many as 10 civilians were killed in the strike, including up to 7 children. At the time of the strike, based upon all the intelligence and what was being reported, I was confident that the strike had averted an imminent threat to our forces at the airport. Based upon that assessment, I and other leaders in the department repeatedly asserted the validity of this strike. I am here today to set the record straight and acknowledge our mistakes. I will end my remarks with the same note of sincere and profound condolences to the family and friends of those who died in this tragic strike. We are exploring the possibility of ex gratia payments.
To other news here this Friday night, the Pentagon now admitting the deadly drone strike in the last days of the U.S. withdrawal from Kabul was a, quote, tragic mistake. 10 civilians, including 7 children, killed in the blast. Here's our chief global affairs correspondent, Martha Raddatz.
Tonight, the U.S. military admitting to a horrific mistake that left 7 innocent children and 3 innocent adults, including an aid worker for an American company, dead.
I offer my profound condolences to the family and friends of those who were killed. Our investigation now concludes that the strike was a tragic mistake.
The deadly attack came just 3 days after a suicide bomber killed 13 American service members and some 170 Afghans at the Kabul airport. The Pentagon said intelligence indicated another attack was imminent. So for 8 hours, U.S. drones then followed a car they thought had linked up with ISIS-K. Officials say when the driver loaded the vehicle with what they thought were explosives, a Hellfire missile was launched. Even days later, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs supporting the strike.
We had very good intelligence that ISIS-K was preparing a specific type vehicle at a specific type location, and it was a righteous strike.
But it was this New York Times investigation that first called the strike into question. The driver of the car was identified as Zamri Ahmadi, an aid worker who they determined from this surveillance video was loading water canisters into the car with his colleagues, not explosives. Today, the Secretary of Defense also acknowledging the mistake, saying, "We now know that there was no connection between Mr. Ahmadi and ISIS-Khorasan, that his activities on that day were completely harmless and not at all related to the imminent threat we believed we faced."
And Martha, I know the U.S. military is still promising a full investigation on this. The other major headline involving the Pentagon tonight, we heard from General Mark Milley on something else today as well. His first public comments about his calls to the Chinese in the final days of the Trump presidency, trying to convince them the U.S. Would not carry out military action. The general defending those calls?
He is, David. He says those calls to his Chinese counterpart were perfectly within the duties and responsibilities of his job, saying those calls are routine and are done to reassure both allies and adversaries. In this case, he said, in order to ensure strategic stability. And David, he said he will mount a vigorous defense when he is before Congress at the end of the month. David?
Martha Raddatz here on a Friday night. Thank you, Martha.